And welcome to the Fantasy Football Fellas YouTube channel. It is me, Cameron Lawrence, back with 8 must-start players for Week 14. Can you guys believe that we are already here? I mean, it is crazy. Some of your playoffs are starting this week. Most of your playoffs are starting next week. And then the small fraction of you that decide they want to play Week 18 are starting the week after. But we are in a crucial time. I know in one of my leagues, there's 1 playoff spot left and 5 teams who can get in there. So these matchups matter. And if you have any of these 8 guys on your team, you need to find a reason to, or you need to find a way to put them in your starting lineup. I don't want to waste any more of your time. So let's jump right in. The first player we're going to talk about is a quarterback, Mr. Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers. He's playing in New York against the Giants this week. There's a chance of rain, but I would still be starting Jordan Love. And I can't believe I'm saying that because I've been out on Jordan Love from the beginning, but over these last 2 weeks, it's been undeniable how good he's last 3 weeks, really 3 straight 20-point fantasy games, beating Detroit in Detroit and then beating Kansas City on prime time. Can't deny how good they've looked as of late. Can't deny how good he's been for fantasy. He's had multiple touchdowns in 3 straight games, and now he gets to play the Giants. The Giants are giving up the 7th most pass yards over the last 5 weeks. And I know I said that it was going to rain, but Jordan Love does offer a rushing upside. Now, it's not as consistent or as great as a Lamar, Justin Fields, but I think it's pretty comparable to a Daniel Jones on any given week, right? I think that's his ceiling on any given week. It's been a little more inconsistent than what we saw from Daniel Jones last year. But that's the upside that he can bring, right? We saw that with Jones last year where he had, 15 passing touchdowns or something ridiculous, and he was quarterback 7. So Jordan Love has the same upside on any given week, but he's throwing 3 straight games, multiple touchdowns, 2 or 3 touchdowns in a game. He's throwing for 250, 300 yards at the same time. This offense is clicking. I know Christian Watson is probably going to be out with a hamstring injury. But Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, they've all been stepping up. They've all been allowing Jordan Love to, get better. And so this week against the Giants, I have him as a top 10 quarterback. I think he's a guy that you need to get into your starting lineup this week. We're going to go to the running back position. So what we're going to do, just so you're aware, we're going to go quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and then quarterback, running back, wide receiver. And then I got one more player. I didn't want to do 2 tight ends because I don't like talking about tight ends that much, but I got one more at the end. So our running back we're then going to talk about is Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon has been my fantasy darling since we started the Fantasy Football Fellas back in 2020 when he was the running back for, I guess it would have been 2021 season. But yeah, so Joe Mixon this week is Indianapolis. And do you know who's been the running back 2 in fantasy football over the last 4 weeks? It's Joe Mixon. He has also been the running back 3 over the last 6 weeks since his bye. Right? We were talking about a guy who everyone was like, hey, he's dead, for fantasy purposes. It's gross. It's just a volume guy. But he has 6 touchdowns in the last 6 weeks, including 2 last week. He's averaging just under 4 receptions a game and has over 30 yards receiving in 4 of his last 5 games, including both full games with Jake Browning. And now he gets the Colts, who are giving up 131 rushing yards a game over their last 4 at 4.8 yards per carry. And on top of that, 5 receptions and 31 receiving yards to running backs every single game. Right, we thought for sure Jake Browning was going to make this team, was going to make for sure this team take a step back, and probably Joe Mixon because they're going to be able to sell it in the run. Well, Jake Browning looked great in Jacksonville, and I'm not saying that he keeps it up, but he's been good for Joe Mixon's fantasy value. Mixon was a running back 1 last week, and now they get a team that is porous at best against the run. Yeah, Joe Mixon needs to be in your fantasy lineup this week. And let me be honest, Jaguars are playing Cleveland this week. In one of my leagues, I'm very strongly considering starting Joe Mixon over Travis Etienne. I think I might do it. Just give you a glimpse of where I'm at. Next, we have Diontae Johnson of the Pittsburgh Steelers playing Thursday night against New England. Since returning from their bye, since he returned from injury, Diontae Johnson's had 14-9 for 8 and 5 targets. And then, of course, that 5 comes last week when Pickett starts, comes out, and then Mitch Trubisky comes in. In the first 3 weeks last season when Mitch was starting before Kenny Pickett took over, Diontae's had 12, 10, and 11 targets. Now he's playing the Patriots, who have been decent, pretty good against tight ends. They've been decent against the run, but they've given up the 8th most receiving yards and the 6th highest catch rate to wide receivers over the last 5 weeks. This is going to be a gross game. I mean, we joked about it on the podcast. I don't know if you guys saw the graphic they put up for this week, Thursday Night Football, but they gave the Patriots Bill Belichick. They didn't have a player they could put in the Patriot graphic, so they just put up Bill. That's how bad the Patriots are right now. So, yeah, I think Mitch Trubisky's going to come out. He's going to try to find his favorite guy to target, and that's going to be Diontae Johnson this week. So I would lock him into your starting lineup. At tight end, the only tight end we're going to talk about today is George Kittle versus Seattle. You know who's been a bottom 10 team in the league against the tight end position this year? It's Seattle. You know who tight end 4 Jake Ferguson played last week when he went 6 catches on 8 targets for 77 yards and a touchdown? The Seattle Seahawks. This is not a great team against the tight end. Even with Jamal Adams back, they've struggled against the position. And Kittle is, when they actually allow him to run routes, one of the best tight ends in the NFL. And some of you may be thinking, no, duh. Of course I'm going to start Kittle. Kittle, he's been great. I drafted him high. But some of you, we have guys like Jake Ferguson. We have guys like Dalton Schultz, who Pat Freiermuth even, after 2 weeks ago, that you're like, ooh, do I stick with Kittle here or do I go the other way? I'm telling you this week, I would go with Kittle. Some of you may be like, I don't want to touch it. Did you see Debo pop off last week? This team, you're never guessing. This is the week that I'm in on Kittle. He's been tight end 2 in points per game behind only TJ Hawkinson since week 8. And then he's got a great matchup this week. So Purdy's been throwing the ball to him. He's been getting open. Kyle Shanahan's using him a little bit more in the passing game than what we saw last year. Well, I guess he did pretty well last year, but you know what I'm trying to say. And so he's got a great matchup against the Seahawks divisional matchup. I would be starting George Kittle. Our second quarterback we are starting is Justin Fields against the Lions. First time he played against the Lions in his first game back. He had 22 fantasy points over the last 2 weeks in 2 divisional matchups. He didn't play last week, so 2 weeks before, because he had a bye week last week. 30 rush attempts and 163 yards between those 2 games. That is ridiculous. He's only had 1 touchdown since he got back. Could obviously score more this week against the Lions team where they're going to have to put up points. They will be in Chicago at home, and the Lions over the last 4 weeks are giving up the 4th most points to quarterbacks per game. So this is just a great matchup for Justin Fields. It's one we've already seen him, exploit this season. And if the rushing number, especially when the rushing numbers keeping up, I like Justin Fields as a start again this week. If I have to pick, because I know someone's going to ask, between Jordan Love and Justin Fields, I got Jordan Love as the safer guy. I got both great upside. That's why they're must starts. Justin Fields obviously has a higher upside because of the rushing, because he can give you 40 points in a week. But I think I lean Jordan Love unless I need a miracle. Then maybe I go with Justin Fields. Our next running back, we're going to go to the Buffalo-Kansas City game, which hopefully will be one of the best games we've seen all season. We said that about Philly and San Francisco, and then San Francisco steamrolled Philly. So it was great if you don't like the Philadelphia Eagles, but if you wanted to see a close, highly contested game, hopefully we can get like what we saw from Buffalo and Philly a couple weeks ago. But James Cook, I would be starting in this one. He's had 12-plus carries in all but 2 games this season and 16 and 17 carries in the last 2 games. Against Philly before their bye 2 weeks ago, he had 7 targets and 6 receptions. Now he gets to play the Chiefs, who are allowing 5.4 yards per carry over the last 4 games. So if he's consistently seeing the attempts, and now he's got a team that allows great efficiency on the ground, he's an efficient running back himself. And you know what? Both teams haven't looked great. So I'm predicting that both teams are like, okay, this is our get-right game. We need to make a statement in this win. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think James Cook's going to have lots of opportunities, both in the air and on the ground. I would be starting James Cook. We talked about Justin Fields a little bit ago. Now we're talking about his wide receiver, DJ Moore, needs to be in your starting lineup. For some of you may be like, Cameron, this one's a little bit of a cop-out. And maybe it is, but I needed to give DJ Moore his flowers right now. 19 and 16 fantasy points in the last 2 games of Fields on 9 and 13 targets with 96 and 114 yards respectively in each of those games. DJ Moore has looked awesome with Justin Fields on the field. Getting crazy there with the Justin Fields on the field. But the Lions are giving up the 3rd most points to wide receivers and the 3rd highest catch rate over the last 5 weeks. So this guy gets insane amount of targets. He's against a defense who isn't very good in a matchup that he's already exploited as well as his quarterback. Yeah, I want DJ Moore in my starting lineup. I got him as a top 10 wide receiver this week, and I think you probably should as well. And the final guy we're going to talk about is Chuba Hubbard at New Orleans. New Orleans was a team in the beginning of the year. They played a little bit better against the run. They've been, slacking in that department as of late. They're allowing the 5th most rushing yards over the last 5 weeks. And Carolina Panthers are going, okay, Bryce Young isn't quite where we hoped he was. Obviously still a rookie. Obviously still deserves time to figure out what exactly he's going to be in the NFL. But at this point, you know what? We can't rely on Bryce to go in this game. So they gave Chuba Hubbard 25 attempts last week. Obviously, I'm not saying he's going to get that. And he had double-digit attempts, though, every week since the bye. He's had 2 games with 5+ targets, so he can be insanely involved in the ground. They're not afraid to get him involved through the air. And he's had 3 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks, 17 and 22 fantasy points. So he's getting involved. This is obviously his backfield now, not Miles Sanders. So I would roll out Chuba Hubbard. He's probably a lower running back too, not quite the same as James Cook and Joe Mixon to me this week. But I do think that if you are looking, in that area, like you got A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones isn't going to play, I would rely on Chuba Hubbard. Alrighty, guys, that is my 8 must starts for this week. We got the podcast coming out tomorrow. There will be no video on Friday. Our friends over at Underdog are taking us down to Miami, so the fellas will be on a little Miami trip this weekend and will not have time to get a video out on Friday, but we will be back on Monday with our 3 videos and 2 podcasts. Until then, deuces, and we will catch you guys later.